Welcome to the fourth Parent Community Educational Series. I'm Tom Burton, Superintendent, and this is the power of technology. So tonight we're going to talk about this. I'm running right now to a program at Sharonville, the city of Sharonville, and we're being recognized for Decade Day, which is awesome. So I'm going to be with you later on tonight, but I just wanted to say this, that Parent Community Educational Series. I'm Tom Burton, Superintendent, and this is the power of technology. So tonight we're going to talk about this. I'm running right now to a program at Sharonville, the city of Sharonville, and we're being recognized for Decade Day, which is awesome. So I'm going to be with you later on tonight, but I just wanted to say this, that tonight you're going to be thrilled to hear these great strategies, these tips from Tyler Urban from Forward Edge, and we certainly appreciate the great partnership we have with them. But I got to run, so I'm going to leave right now, but I'm going to be back later. And so thank you very much. Here's Tyler. Tyler, thanks so much from Forward Edge. Of course, go Vikes, and we'll see you later.
All right, everybody. Well, thanks for the introduction. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen, and we're going to dive right into the presentation today. So as Tom mentioned, I'm obviously here to talk to you about keeping your kids safe online, digital citizenship, tips and tricks that you can use as a parent, to arm yourself for all of the things that your kids are able to access online, which is both kind of a scary thing, but can also be a beautiful thing, a good thing if used responsibly. So the first thing I want to let you do is get these slides, because this particular resource is filled with all sorts of links that will enable you to download templates you can use with your kids, conversation starters, resources from the government and other useful entities and institutions. And really, this is meant to be something that you can come back to as a resource and a reference over time. So we made it pretty easy on you. You can type in that bit.ly link there. It is case sensitive. So it's bit.ly/FE tech for teens. Or if you're on a mobile device, you can just scan the QR code there, and you can obviously access the slide presentation through that as well. We're also going to make this resource available after the fact. So if you're not able to capture it now and open it up now, you'll be able to access these slides after the fact. So no worries if you don't have a way to access them and bring them up at this moment. So we'll give everybody just another second or two to get these slides if you want them, or take a picture of the bit.ly link so you can type it in later. But we're going to go into the theme of the presentation, and that is keeping your kids safe online. What a topic, both relevant but so important in the day and age which we live in now, with many of our students doing some remote learning or hybrid learning, or of course just being kids, having access to cell phones and computers and tablets. There are so many different things that they can access for good, but there's also a dark side to the internet that all of us have to be careful. We have to be cautious about. And so that's what this presentation is going to do. Feature some of the good, but also, of course, some of the negative, and arm yourself with some strategies and tips that can help you avoid those things. And of course, keep your kids on a good path as they grow to maturity in using the internet responsibly. So just briefly about myself, I'm the Assistant Director of C&I, which stands for Curriculum and Integration, at a company called Forward Edge. We have a great partnership with the Princeton School District, and I am not a parent. So in some ways, what I'm going to share with you in this presentation, I haven't experienced yet. And I know that when I do become a parent, hopefully someday, these things are going to be really challenging. These are things that all of us have to kind of work together on, because we know to raise our kids, it really takes a village. It takes the school, the teachers, the administrators, you, the parents, community members, neighbors. We're all in this together. But working in technology and also working as a former middle school teacher, I taught for 6 years at Norwood schools. I know that there's a lot of pitfalls that our students can fall into. And I also have an awareness to kind of the darker side of the internet as well. And so that's a little bit about me and my experience. And I'm privileged to be here with you today to talk on these matters. So if you think about it, the internet in its infancy, really nobody had a clue as to what it would become. But now, a very respected person, Bill Gates, who is instrumental in really tech and the internet being what it is today, he said this: the internet is becoming the town square for the global village of tomorrow. And if you think about it now, especially with COVID-19 and all of these lockdowns and restrictions, we have to go to the internet more and more just to interact with others. It really is becoming this place of where we can buy things, we can talk to people, we can interact, we can learn information. We can do so much, and it's becoming this kind of bustling hub for everything that we need to access in our life. It really has transformed how we interact and how we live as humans. So I do want to just take the opportunity, and I want to give you, all of who are in attendance today, I want to give you the opportunity to share some of the challenges that you are facing. So if you're joining us via Facebook Live, if you have a cellular device, a tablet, a laptop nearby, what I would like you to do is go to menti.com. It's menti.com. You can type in that PIN number there, 3751956, and it will allow you to express some of the challenges you face while trying to keep your kids safe online, because I could project and predict what might be troubling you or what challenges you may be facing, but I'd rather hear it from you, the parents or guardians, directly. What are some of the things you're worried about? What are some of the things that are concerning you? What are some of the things your kids maybe have gotten into already that has you maybe pulling your hair out a little bit? And so if you either type in that code or scan that QR code, it gives you the opportunity to share your thoughts on this matter. And so I'm going to give everybody a second or two to chime in. And we're going to look at your responses live. This is going to be pretty interesting. All right, so here's some of the things you've said. So we have a lot of responses so far, but as these responses scroll up and down, notice some of the things that you're concerned about. Crossing a line of trust, internet predators, cyberbullying, maybe even a lack of openness, a lack of communication with you as their parent. What about things like adult or mature content? I mean, there are just plenty of other things. And as you can see, as these are scrolling up, many more things that you're worried about. All the apps they can access, maybe people posing as someone who they really aren't on the internet, trying to prey on your kids. What about even things like YouTube, which can be so good and fun, having material on it that maybe we don't want our kids to see? What are some things we can do to avoid that situation, to mitigate those different circumstances? And so here are just some of the things that you have posted, and I appreciate you taking the opportunity to do this. But I'm going to go ahead and go back to the presentation here. And so with all of those things that are on your mind, now we want to arm you with some tips. What can you do to keep your kids safe online? Well, really, this whole entire section comes down to staying educated and staying aware. You know, the internet is always changing. When you think about it, there are new apps and new websites and new pitfalls every day with what we access on the internet. So maybe staying educated and staying aware, that involves a lot of effort and energy on our part. But before we focus on some of those things, let's focus on some of the positives. We mentioned that the internet is so powerful. It's such a great tool. Most of us likely use it each and every day of our lives. You know, who would have thought that now we can have the internet in our pocket everywhere we go? We can just pull up a website, pull up an app, and at our fingertips, we have things available to us to allow us to access internet wherever we are. So notice some of the positives. And I want you to look at this series of images and just see some of the things that the internet allows us to do. The internet gives us as a positive tool. So think about things like social media. communicating and contacting old friends. What about Facebook? They dedicated a safety check to make sure people were okay during natural disasters. This man in Haiti, he used his iPhone to treat wounds while he was trapped after a hurricane. Someone on Instagram was able to diagnose that their granddad actually had cancer by a picture that was posted. And then this last one, an adopted man was able to reunite with his birth parents 37 years after connecting through a DNA test kit. So that's just a small sample of some of the great, positive, heartwarming things that are brought to us by the internet. I mean, goodness, look at some of these things. Being able to treat yourself as you're stuck in rubble, all because you had your iPhone in your pocket, being able to find your birth parents, being able to connect with people all across the globe with just one click. Here we are tonight, each in our own different homes, all together on a Facebook Live. And so the internet certainly allows us to do so many amazing things. Like we mentioned, instant access to information, global connectedness, those friendships that we might not have had we not had the internet or social media. Real-time communication. How many times have you Facebooked someone or been on a Zoom call now that we've had these COVID-19 lockdowns and restrictions? You see, we're not really able to go out and interact with our friends and our family like we used to, but now we just call them up on FaceTime, and a couple moments later, there we are seeing them and them seeing us. Well, I'll be honest with you, I love the internet for all the fun and entertainment. YouTube, video games. I know that probably many of your kids are very much into video games and YouTube as well, and we are as adults. It's something fun. There's so many interesting things we can view. And then even things like self-expression, creativity, you name it, the list goes on and on and on. And we want to accentuate these positives. We want to highlight them because it does so many good things for us. It really is one of the greatest inventions in the history of humankind. But, as mentioned, there's always a but. What about some of the negatives? Where do you as a parent have to be cautious? What do you need to be on the lookout for? Well, let's go through just a few examples, and hopefully these are not some of your worst fears imagined, because you're going to see some of the things here, they're not ideal. They're definitely not things that make the internet fun, entertaining, worthwhile. So notice, of course, cyberbullying. We have, of course, things like sexting. This poor girl was cyberbullied and she committed suicide. How terrible. Our data, Facebook leaking it, other companies leaking it, our passwords being compromised, an app like TikTok actually being investigated by the government over the way it uses data. All sorts of hacks of our passwords and our accounts. A social media post actually caused an athlete to lose his Division I scholarship because of comments he had made years earlier as a younger person. And then notice this, everyone saw it, how quickly bad information, bad images can be shared with hundreds upon thousands of people. Certainly, these are our worst nightmares. These are things that we wouldn't want to happen to anyone. We certainly don't want them to happen to our kids. We have to protect them. We have to make sure that we're aware of the dangers and then take steps to make sure that they're avoiding any and all of these scenarios that we just brought up. And this is just a handful of situations that I could have shared with you today. So when you think about it, things like cyberbullying, we know that many of our younger students, teenagers, they experience that, maybe on a daily or weekly basis. All the inappropriate content out there, what really are they seeing? What do they have access to? Then things that we sometimes don't think about, identity theft, data leaks, our passwords. Of course, online predators, and then we even mentioned before, revisionist history. Maybe I post something when I'm just a young, dumb teenager, but years later, it's maybe taken out of context and I lose a scholarship. I don't get a job promotion. I maybe get blackballed by friends or family because they see something that I posted years before. And so all of these online dangers can result in a lot of negative things: depression, anxiety, loneliness, and we do not want that to happen to our kids. So what can we do? Well, we want to avoid some of the traps that can come from using the internet too freely or overly using the internet in an unprotected manner. When you look at some of these statistics, 3.1 billion people, and these are older statistics, these are pre-COVID statistics, so maybe some of these things have changed. 3.1 billion people use social media. 95% of teens have smartphone access, and 61% of teen interaction happens online. Now, that is a lot of interaction going on. That's a lot of access for younger people to have. Nearly every student or every kid has a smartphone, and you can see some of the dangers that can come from that. And so here are some of the negatives. 1 in 3 teens have been cyberbullied. Really, you're 2 times more likely to show symptoms of depression if you've experienced this. And 41% of teens report having a negative experience online. And you see, these are just the statistics that are reported. This probably is not including other instances that just go unknown or untold. And so once again, what can we do to avoid these bad statistics? What can we do to protect our kids? Well, the first thing is awareness. So part of this presentation this evening is to help you, the parent, be more aware to some of the dangers and to some of the applications that are out there that you might want to have on your radar, that you might want to really start looking at and examining. How is my child, how is my student using this, or are they using it at all? Is this something they should be using? And so the reason I bring this up, these 15 apps have actually been flagged by several sheriff departments across the United States as different applications that have led to online predators taking advantage of kids, possibly even messaging happening between minors and adults, sexting, and even just data leaks, hacks, passwords, you name it. And so these 15 applications, we're not going to go through all 15. We're just going to highlight a few, are some that you as a parent might want to be aware of, and then be ready to have a conversation with your child about how to use this application or whether they're going to use it at all. So let's dive into some of these and see if maybe some of them are familiar, some of them may be a little unknown, but what are some of the dangers you can be aware of so that you can help your kids really use these responsibly. Now, the first one is Snapchat, and this one has definitely seen its popularity rise and fall several different times, but this is a really popular messaging application. And the key with it is that it promises that these photos and videos will disappear. So I can send a video to my friend, and 10 seconds later after they watch it, it's gone away. It's disappeared. But we know that with the internet, that's not true. That's not true at all. These images can be taken a screenshot of and saved on someone else's phone. These videos can be downloaded. And it's something too that we know that with applications like this data is being stored somewhere. You know, the internet, it is more of a permanent tool. It leaves a permanent trace, even if these applications promise that something is temporary. The other thing with Snapchat is there's actually a setting that you can turn on or off that allows users to see your location. So this could be another thing, especially for younger kids, what a danger that could be. Of course, it's intended to be used by adults to possibly find out where your friend is or meet up or whatever it may be. But you can see how just a simple setting could also add an additional danger from a very popular, very widely used application like Snapchat. So that's one to have on your radar. Let's go to a second one. Now, this one is wildly popular. TikTok is so much fun too. Who doesn't love watching some of the creative TikToks that are out there? The problem with this particular app is that it really is constantly under investigation for how its data is shared, how it's protected. It's actually been investigated by the US government. For a moment there, Donald Trump was even threatening to ban this application from being downloaded in the United States. The other thing is too, this app can also make kids vulnerable to predators, possibly inappropriate content. It's really difficult because we know that it's fun. We know that it's popular, but we have to take a step back and think, wait, what is this exposing my children to? What data is it keeping? How is that data being stored? How is it being protected? And so those are all good things to ask and think about, even with a really fun application like TikTok. Let's go into another one. This one is maybe not as popular, not as well known, but this is another messaging application. Now the key with Kik is that it allows really kids, minors, to bypass the traditional method of messaging someone else. And that's where the real danger lies. Because on Kik, it gives me access, if I'm a child, to anyone and everywhere. It's bypassing the traditional messaging method where it goes straight to my phone as a text. Now it comes through an app, and it allows me to share my location. I can talk to whoever I want, anywhere, anytime. And that can just be a can of worms that can be opened up and cause all sorts of trouble. So this is another application. Not to say, of course, disclaimer with all of these, just like with the internet in general, there is good that can come from there. Is fun and entertainment, but there's also a caution to be had as well. Now, this one, admittedly, I don't know how many younger kids are using an application like Meet Me, but I do know that teenagers, possibly high school age, college age kids, they're definitely using applications like Meet Me. So it's a social media app, kind of also has this vibe of being a dating app as well under the guise of a social media app. But once again, notice one of the cautions. It suggests friends or interactions based off of your geographical proximity. So you could think to yourself how this could be used by online predators or people with all sorts of ulterior motives and bad intentions. And once again, because this is kind of a social media, hey, make new friends, kind of a dating app, but not really, it also intrinsically encourages people to meet up in person. And so this can be another application where, used unwisely, can cause a lot of problems. Now, this one's sneaky. And hey, I'm the tech guy, so I get a bad rap, especially if any kids are on this Facebook Live right now. They might be saying, this guy, he's a little too over the top. He's a little too strict. This particular app is sneaky because to mom or dad, it looks like a calculator. You're thinking, oh, my son or daughter, they're doing math. They downloaded a calculator on their phone. This is great. But it's actually a vault. It's a vault that hides really whatever. Videos, images, downloads, things that you wouldn't want someone else, like mom or dad, to see. And so what can look very innocent may not be. And so once again, all of this is to say, as parents and as educators, we just have to be aware of what's out there. That's really step number one, is gaining this awareness so that when these warning signs come up, we kind of already know, what to look for, what applications to have a conversation about, what possibly to look out for on your child's phone. Here's the key though. Remember, there's always going to be another app. There's always going to be another website. You can't keep up. You just can't. So being aware is part trying to keep pace with technology and all the updates, but you also have to kind of just commit yourself to this never-ending battle. You have to know that I have to educate myself as an adult, as a parent. I have to be aware if I want to have a chance to have these conversations with my child. And so, there may be a new app tomorrow that becomes the next big hit. but are we ready to have a conversation about it? Are we ready to see what are some of the benefits, and then maybe what are some of the drawbacks, so that we can assess it and then have that conversation with our children? So now let's dive into the strategies. This is the part that really benefits all of us. We need to know that we're not in this alone, that if we're armed with the right strategies, we can help our kids navigate the internet safely. We can help keep them safe online. We can feel confident in that. So some of the things I want to share with you, there's links later on in the presentation as well, but there are several resources in this presentation that even help you just get the conversation started, kind of get the ball rolling a little bit. These conversations can be tough to have, but I'll tell you that these conversations, although awkward, although not the most fun to have as a parent, they can save you from the conversations that are really nightmarish down the road. When your child does get cyberbullied, or when they do post something inappropriate on social media, or when they do get involved in something else, having these conversations can really help. And so once again, I'm not a parent. I know that this is a tall task, but these resources can really help you get the conversation started and get the ball rolling. And then it also mentions some teachable moments. So think about, no matter how old your child is, what are some natural stopping points when you can start to help them grow in their maturity with how they use the internet? Maybe when they get their first device, a tablet, a phone, maybe when they become a teenager, maybe when they graduate high school and go off to college and start to have even more responsibility. These are all times when we can look for this little in where we can have a conversation and have a teachable moment with our kids. So those resources are available to you. They're linked in this presentation. Now, some of the things that I want to also keep you aware of, the big thing is this: educate yourself, be ready to have these conversations. Look out for warning signs. The warning signs will show themselves to you, whether your children are seeming depressed or isolated, whether they're, hiding their phone from you. But ultimately, you want to capitalize on those teachable moments. And these are all things that can help you keep your kids safe online. So let's talk briefly about two more things. These often get maybe, not focused on very much, just because we don't want to think about it, right? We want to download an app, we want to use it, we don't want to think about the data or the passwords. But this is an important conversation to have as well, even for us as adults. So let's talk briefly about this. Have any of you seen one of these before when you download a new app on your phone or on your tablet? What do? When we're prompted to view the terms or just agree, what do we all do? Myself included. I click agree. I don't view the terms. I have no idea what data is being collected, how it's being shared, who has access to it. I have no idea. And so that's caution number one. We just want to stop and think. What am I agreeing to? Because this app may be free, but is it really free? How is your data being used to fund the fun you're having on this application? And then this is pretty interesting too. Notice some of these most popular passwords. 12345 ABC 123, I love you, let me in. We probably want to avoid passwords like these as well. And so we can chuckle at this and have a good time with it. But these are two things that we really don't want to think about. They can be annoying. Oh, what's my password? I forget. But we have to stop and think, am I being safe with the way my data is being used, with the way my child's data is being used? Am I helping them think about this? So let's talk about some of the dangers and then some of the things you can do to help mitigate the dangers. We know that some of the consequences of poorly protected data, bad passwords, are identity theft, impersonation, access to sensitive information, even loss of money, devices that get stolen or compromised, spam, malware, viruses, all of these things that just are such a headache. And so the key is this: view your and your child's personally identifiable information as a commodity, just like you would a dollar bill. Your information, your data is a commodity that is worth protecting. And so it may be annoying not to just hit accept and download the app, but you really need to start thinking about and having conversations with your children about, ooh, what is that app? Looks so fun, but what does it keep track of? Where does all that data go? Those are questions that sometimes we really have to stop and ponder. So here are some strategies. Strategy 1, create stronger passwords. I'm going to be honest with you. I know that I'm coming here as a guest presenter. This is one I could work on. Not using the same passwords again and again for different sites, mixing up the letters and numbers and symbols in my passwords, keeping them longer, maybe avoiding identifiable information, right? Don't use your birth date in a password. Don't use your middle name in a password or your dog's name. Try to keep it something that's unique, but also memorable. And that's a tricky balance to strike. Now, here is one strategy that I recommend to everybody who's joined us tonight. The number one way to keep your passwords and data safe: update your passwords at least once a year. I might even say every 6 months if I could, but once a year would be great. And I know that that's annoying, that's tedious, that's a task. You have to go in and update it on your phone and your computer, but it is worth the effort. So that's strategy number 1 for both you and your kids. Get yourself and them in the habits of updating your passwords. The second one is adjusting your privacy settings. So especially for younger kids, think about the privacy settings on your social media profiles. Learn who can see what. Are my images available to everyone or just friends? Are my posts viewable to the public or just my friends? And really, for most kids, it's advised that you keep their profiles private, that they're not open to just anybody, because once again, people with ill intent, with ulterior motives, they can take images and they can do all sorts of things with them that might be posted in good fun, but if things are open, they can be used in a bad way. So this is another thing to take a look at. And a lot of these tools, especially tools like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, they have so many great privacy settings, but the key is going into them, understanding them, and updating them. And this may be something that as your child grows older, some of these settings you can start to taper off and loosen up on a little bit. But this is another great strategy to arm yourself with, is to make sure that you know the settings and adjust the settings to keep your kids safe. Here's one more. Review your digital footprint. So we mentioned that Division I athlete, he lost a scholarship to an awesome school because of a silly post he made when he was younger. And so it's good for us to know that we have to think about what we have posted in the past and really what our brand is, what our footprint is, what the message or persona is that we're creating online. So we want to help our kids examine that too. We might even perform a search of our kid, of our child. What is out there? What pictures show up on Google? What profiles show up? And then help them to remove unwanted content. Think about, hey, was that the wisest post? Was that the best idea to share your location? Was this the best image to add to your profile? Those are all things that, once again, tricky conversations to have, but in the long run could be so beneficial. And so once again, just like your passwords, review your child's digital footprint at least once a year. And this is a good thing to do with them to help them kind of see how they can stop and think about the persona that they're creating and sharing with others online. So here are some do's and don'ts. And so we've talked about all of these things, but just some really good worthwhile reminders to keep in mind as you look to protect your data. So a couple of more resources here. There's this digital reputation checklist that helps you review your child's digital footprint with them, even gives you some steps you can take to do this. Then there's this student data privacy. It helps you understand how your child's data is being collected, shared, protected, and it also just reminds you at the end, remember, you have control. So we're in all of this together, and we want to make sure that we're aware and that we're doing what we can to protect our kids. So here's another kind of big takeaway. Remember, your digital footprint, it's really like your digital tattoo. It's not a footprint that just can be wiped away in the sand or, in the mud, right? It's a tattoo. The internet, it's written in ink. It is not in pencil. So think before you accept terms, you share information, or you make posts. And the better we can help our kids to understand that, the safer they will be online. So we're going to conclude with just a really brief section on screen time. This is a tricky one. I'm thinking right now, with COVID going on, our remote learners, our hybrid learners, maybe even back in the spring when the coronavirus pandemic just came to the United States, kids might have been home all day on phones and tablets and Chromebooks and laptops. Screen time probably skyrocketed. But here are some good tips for you as a parent to help control it and keep it balanced. So just some quick statistics. 5 hours a day, not including schoolwork, that's how often tweens spend on some sort of device. Now, what about our teens once we get into high school? That's estimated to be about an average of 7 hours per day, not including their schoolwork. You might think, when do they have time to sleep? That's a lot of screen time. And those are maybe pretty alarming numbers. And maybe if we're being honest with ourselves, I know if I'm being honest with myself, I'm on my phone and my laptop a lot too. So maybe this is something we can all think about together. But here are some of the negatives once again. Too much screen time, it can result in isolation, inactivity, insecurity, which leads to things like emotional distress, depression, you name it. We want to strike the right balance with how often our children are on devices. So what can we do? Well, here are several strategies that are considered best practices when you are looking to find the right balance with your kids. So here's a couple of things. 1, setting boundaries. Now that looks different at different ages, right? So maybe when you're younger and you have younger kids, maybe after 7 p.m., 8 p.m., they don't have access to the tablet anymore. Or maybe the tablet and phone is kept in the parents' room at night once the kids are in bed. Maybe there are curfews in place, or maybe there's some sort of active screen time that you can encourage that gets the kids up and moving and interacting with others. There's even, if you have to, there's a contract included in this resource that you can use to really set up this whole collective family agreement. Maybe one night of the week we all have dinner together, or maybe after 9 p.m. all of us put our devices down, or maybe when we're at the kitchen table we put our phone in a little bucket in the middle of the table until dinner's done. Whatever it is, the decision is you. It's for you, the parent, because a one size fits all formula, it doesn't work from family to family. It maybe doesn't even work from kid to kid. We really have to think about what is the appropriate amount of screen time and how can we help our younger ones manage it effectively. So I mentioned that online safety agreement. So you can go ahead and you can download this, print it off, put in some sort of rules that fit you and your children, something we want to work on and make a priority. And then, of course, some other great resources as well. So I'm going to click through these pretty quickly here, but these are all available to you in this presentation. So some last minute takeaways, because I know that I have gone slightly over my time, but I'm very passionate about this subject, and I hope that you've learned some good takeaways and tips. But here are some ones to really take home. Communicate with your kids early and often. Don't hesitate, even if it's an awkward conversation to have. 2, monitor your child's online activity. We all play an active role in being aware of what our kids are up to. And so we may feel like we're taking their privacy away or we're micromanaging them, but view it as protecting them, because that really is what it is. But review your online presence together. We talked about how a digital footprint is like a digital tattoo. It's important to review that regularly. Agree on acceptable digital behavior. If everybody's on the same page, keeping your kids safe becomes a much easier task. And adjust your expectations over time. Once again, a one-size-fits-all formula just doesn't work. These are best practices that many parents, educators, technology consultants have found to be useful for kids. And so we know that as we adjust, we make small tweaks to really have it fit our kids best. And of course, we want to go back to the positives. We want to make the positives so loud that they drown out all of the negatives, because there are so many wonderful things that the internet and social media gives us, and when used responsibly, can bring so many benefits. And that's the biggest takeaway. Keep the positives in mind, highlight the positives with your kids, and help keep them safe online. So here's some helpful resources, and that actually concludes my presentation. I think we're going to open it up to questions, and there's my contact information. If you'd like to reach out, feel free to email me or contact me on Twitter. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Wow, thank you, Tyler. That's some great information. I love the fact that the parents got to kind of chime in earlier and be part of it through the app that you introduced. And now, for those that are watching us on Facebook, this is your chance to interact directly. I'm Chris Lockhart. I'm the Director of Technology for Princeton City Schools. And again, Tyler has been introduced. They're a great partner. They help fill a lot of the gaps and things that we in education need additional assistance. So again, if you're on Facebook, just go ahead and type something in the chat right there if you have any questions that you have. And while we're waiting for questions, because there is a little bit of a delay, Tyler, talk to me. I know in your resources, you talked about some of the companies that provide internet access. Is there any way to contact them as far as safety or internet safety protocols? Do they have those available?
Yeah, that's a really good point, Chris. So that second to last slide, some of the links on it actually take you directly to companies like AT&T, Verizon, or other popular internet service providers, Spectrum, Cincinnati Bell, all of the things that they do for families, and even some of the protections that they have built in. Some of the parent monitoring softwares, but if you don't want to get that invested in it, just things like web filtering or other tools that parents can turn on to put some things in place to keep kids safe online. And honestly, most of, if not all of those tools offered by your cell phone provider or your internet service provider, those are mostly free. And so it really just comes down to, activating them on your family plan or activating them on your cable bill, and then kind of putting some of those settings in place so that now, kids on their phone or their tablet or whenever, they're browsing the internet at home, those protections are in place and they're provided usually, like I said, for free through those companies. So that would really be, I think, the first place I would go to if I was a parent, see what's already available based off of the services that's being provided for you from your cell phone or from your cable company.
Very good, very good. So you mentioned about some software and protections provided by the internet providers, be it a landline or cellular. What other options are available to parents? You mentioned two things. One was more of a blocking, the other was more of a monitoring. Talk to me a little bit about what the monitoring looks like.
Yeah, so some of the monitoring software that is out there, there are apps you can use on your phone. There are monitoring softwares you can download on your home PC, home laptop, they can get as detailed as you really want. I mean, they can log things like browser history, all of the websites that different users go to. They can even clue in on terms that are searched for. You can flag certain words or flag certain categories so that they're not viewable or not accessible on your home network. They even, with some of these cell phone companies, some of these monitoring softwares will allow you to clamp down even who the cell phone is able to call or text. Or I know this is very big brother-ish, but even the incoming messages to a phone, the images that are sent. So by no means am I advocating and saying every parent needs to do that, but just know that, if you are worried or if your child is experiencing some of these warning signs or they're having problems, these tools are there if you need to go to that level, or if you want to have that layer of confidence in knowing what they're navigating, what they're accessing, what they're looking at, who they're talking to. All of those things allow you to really monitor all of the incoming and outgoing traffic on the device.
Very good. So a quick follow-up to that. Let me ask you, if I feel like that's something that I should do, what is your thought on whether or not I should inform my students of those tools or not inform them that I have those tools?
Yeah, I think that's a tricky question. I think that it kind of goes back to there's not a one-size-fits-all formula. For me, I was the type of kid, if I knew there was the threat of it, that's all I needed. That would deter me. But I think my sister would admit she was the one, she would call your bluff. She needed to know that monitoring software was in place and that it was working and that it was downloaded and it was tracking what she was doing. And so I think that it really just comes down to knowing the personality of your kids, to knowing what resonates with them, what speaks to them, what possibly level of discipline or monitoring they need. And I think that even works, in our schools with students. Sometimes the kids just need to know, on the Chromebooks, the IT staff can track me, and they're just not even going to push it. And then you're going to have your other group of kids, like you said earlier, Chris, kids are like water. They're going to find a way, and they're going to find a way to test the limits and push the limits. And so I know that that's not necessarily answering the question, but it really is just like knowing your child, knowing their personality, and then letting them know based off of what you think would be best for them.
Yeah, actually, I think that's a perfect answer. I think it goes back to the communicate. And I think that parents have challenges raising kids, just period. So now when we throw the complication of technology in, the same way I can't say that all kids have to be treated the same way, you also have to gauge how you interact with your child as far as internet network safety. Now, for the parents that are watching, Tyler did allude to the fact that Princeton does have some controls in place, especially when they're on campus. And so I really get to be the bad guy for them because I'm not their parent, so I just get to be the bad guy. And we do put barriers in place to keep the students safe while they're at school and on the school network. It's not 100% guaranteed because things are constantly changing, but we take it very serious to make sure that those students are protected. One of the challenges that we're dealing with now, one of the reasons we invited Tyler to come on, is the fact that now we're sending these devices home, and we want you to have some other tools, including checking with your ISP. I know some of you have reached out directly to me with some concerns about the students and devices. I'll go on just a little bit to add on to what Tyler has said, which has been so good and encompassing, but there are some low-tech things that you can do also to protect your students. Number one, limit their availability to technology in private spaces. My girls were just about the age of technology, and me being a computer guy, I had computers in the home, but they weren't allowed to use laptops in their bedrooms, and the computer for family use was in a public area. Number two, again, know what your student has access to on all of their devices, which will include their cell phones. Some of their gaming systems have internet access also, tablets, all of those things. So, it's some work, but the parents have to kind of educate ourselves also to understand the threats that are out there. And then the biggest one, communicate. We can't protect our students from everything in the world, but good parents are always talking, having those dialogues, having their conversations with students about how to be safe online, IRL, which is the kids' way of saying in real life, and all those other spaces. So we're coming up on 7:20. Again, we're going to leave some space here. We've had a great presentation by Tyler. Tyler and I have had a great dialogue. We want to open that up. So again, jump in here if you have any questions, thoughts, or concerns. While we're waiting, there's a little bit of a delay on Facebook, so it may be a few seconds before we get those in. You all can always contact me. I am Chris Lockhart, clockhart@vikingmail.org. If you go to the website, go under technology, the contact information is there. I'll try to do my best to get back to you as quickly as possible. You have Tyler's contact information. If for some reason you don't, you could always contact me and we'll put you in touch with Tyler. But the bottom line is we want to make sure that your students are safe. We want to make sure that your students are healthy. We want to make sure that your students are cared for. And we also want to give them access to one of the greatest learning resources in our time, which is the internet. I'm a little bit older, as you can tell, so I remember the encyclopedia salesman would actually come to the door, and we were so excited because I know my family, my mother was always into learning. My father was always into learning. So every 3 years, we couldn't afford it every year, but every 3 years, we'd get a new encyclopedia. And that information would be about 6 months old by the time it got to us because of printing process. And so, 1 to 2 years in, it's old news. And now the kids have access to instant information. We've experienced it during this election cycle where, we're getting instant updates, on election night and the days that follow. So it's a great resource. But again, we want to make sure that our students are not negatively impacted by some of the things that they can stumble into. So Tyler, we've got a few more moments. Anything you want to add to the conversation?
I think the biggest thing, Chris, and it's really been, I think, focused in on during the presentation and also afterwards, is just sometimes I think parents, and I know that I feel this way, you likely do too, working in technology, you don't want to feel like the bad guy. You don't want to feel like you're lording over your child, that you're not helping them, that you're maybe getting into their privacy or not giving them enough privacy, or all of those different things. And that is such a difficult balance to strike. But I would say when it comes to the internet, especially when kids reach a certain age, really the cautious path is usually going to be the path that will, I think, be the wisest path. Just because, yes, that is a balance to strike. It's tricky. How much privacy do I give my kids? How much access do I give my kids? But ultimately, when you open up those lines of communication, you do some sort of monitoring, you keep yourself aware and educated, you're never going to regret maybe being overly cautious instead of too relaxed and maybe too loose. And so those would be some of the things that I've heard from parents is, Tyler, what's the right balance to strike? And I think that once again, if you're overly cautious, that's never a bad thing. Your kids, they may begrudge you in the moment, but they'll really appreciate it really down the road. And so that's what all of us want. We want them to mature to the point where now when they go off to college and become adults, they know how to access information wisely. They know how to evaluate what they're seeing online and make good decisions.
Very good. Very good. All right. Well, I don't see any additional questions that we've not covered in the chat, and we're at 7:25. So, Tyler, do you have anything else for us?
Chris, I think that's all I have. I just really appreciate not only the opportunity, but also all the parents and students who attended live. It really was a privilege, and I look forward to extending this partnership in the future. So thank you guys so much for the invitation.
Thank you very much. And if any of you joined us late, this presentation will be available for replay on Facebook. Mr. Burton is currently at another event accepting some great accolades for Princeton. You'll hear more about that tomorrow. So on behalf of Mr. Burton, the superintendent of Princeton City Schools, Mrs. Phillips, Dr. Phillips, and all of the other Princeton staff, I would just like to say thank you for coming and being here tonight. And as Mr. Burton would say, always, go Vikes. Thank you, Tyler.
And the video, we're going to make sure that we put that